Welcome back to Hannity. As we inch closer to the sequester deadline and as President Obama continues to deploy his irresponsible scare tactics about what could happen, there are reports that Republicans are working on a bill that would give the president's cabinet members the authority to target cuts in their respective agencies' budgets. But is there any truth to these reports, and can the sequester be avoided? Joining me now in studio to help answer those questions and more, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. How are you, Senator?
Hey, Sean.
Good to see you, man. How you been?
Good.
Welcome to New York.
Yeah, in the Big Apple tonight. I don't know about this big city. See, I'm a small town guy from Kentucky.
Just be careful if you're carrying a gun or anybody with you. You're only allowed 7 bullets.
I was more worried about the big gulp. I had a big gulp coming in here in the 16-ounce drink. I'm afraid your mayor's going to arrest me.
No, actually they're going after restaurants now, which is pretty crazy. You know what frustrates me? The average wealth of the average American in the last 5 years has gone down 22%. And everybody out there watching this program, for the most part, has had to make decisions to cut spending. And we're going to spend as much this year pretty much as we spent last year. And the president is scaring the living daylights out of the country. Why can't we make even a basic, why can't we just keep the budget the same?
If we can't cut this little bit amount, and this is really a cut in the rate of increase, I worry, will we ever move forward? Are we really destined for bankruptcy in this country if we can't cut the rate of growth? Because that's what we're talking about. Over 10 years, the $1.2 trillion in cuts actually allows the budget to grow over 10 years.
Slower
growth.
So every year we have this thing, it's called baseline budgeting. I'll let you explain it to people.
Well, basically, the budget's always going up several percentage points a year, and we're slowing down the rate of growth. Now, in the first year, there is a little bit of dip in spending and discretionary spending. So some budgets they will have to look at. But interestingly, all of these budgets went up 17% under Obama. Now they're going to come down 2 to 6%. They'll still be way above when he came in office. I've also presented a plan that would allow us to do this without any layoffs. We have 100,000 people who retire every year. Don't replace them. We pay federal employees 16% more than private employees. Equalize the pay. Cut out half of foreign aid. Cut out 25% of travel. Boom, you got your sequester and nobody got laid off.
You know, by the way, I was really disappointed. You had an amendment that would have prevented the U.S. from, we're paying for them, F-16s and tanks and $1.5 billion going to Morsi, the Muslim Brotherhood leader of Egypt. Why didn't more Republicans support you on that?
You know, I lost the majority of the Republicans, but we had 19 votes, so we're making some progress. We lost all the Democrats. I asked Secretary Kerry this as he was coming before my committee for confirmation. I was like, wouldn't you like to at least place some conditions? What about waiting a year before you send? See if the Muslim Brotherhood becomes more scary, less stable, or if they're even in power in a year before you send these planes. Their argument is, oh, we're sending them to the military, and that's not Morsi.
Morsi fired the military.
Yes, the head of the military. Yes, the head of the military now is a Morsi appointee. So I don't know what they're saying, but I think it's foolish and dangerous, and eventually those weapons might be used against Israel.
How do you go up against a president that's a demagogue? Because this is what the latest is. In Georgia, 4,180 fewer children will get vaccines for measles, mumps, rubella, tetanus, etc. In New York, 2,300 disadvantaged, vulnerable children could lose child care. I mean, what about the children that are going to have to pay all this money back?
Here's what we should say. Number one, Mr. President, the sequester was your idea. And number two, you're making those cuts because we've offered other cuts. I told him yesterday there's some goldfish that they've been spending $5 million on research on goldfish to see how they interact collectively and democratically. They spent $1.5 million on
That's really important stuff.
Yeah, $1.5 million on roll-up beef jerky, okay? $300,000 on dog kennels, $100,000 on comedians that we send to India. The list goes on and on and on.
Yeah, and so you're basically saying there's another way to do this. The president obviously wants to demagogue it, though, and portray Republicans as hating children, grandma, and wanting poison air and water, all that stuff. I don't think the Republicans have been effective in combating this language, these tactics of the president and the Democrats. What can they do better?
Well, they need to be less afraid. They need to come forward and say, we can survive the sequester. We can do the sequester without layoffs if you'll actually target the sequester towards waste in government. There's $100 billion in our government spending that is unaccounted for. They do not know where it was spent.
100 million?
100 billion.
Billion?
Unaccounted for.
What,
they
did
don't
it just
know.
disappear?
Well, it's improperly spent. They're not sure exactly where it was spent.
Well, that's just great to hear. It really gives me confidence.
Yeah, I think the national defense is the most important thing we do in Washington. It is a constitutional duty. However, the Pentagon should be audited. Some have estimated $25 billion in savings by simply auditing it.
Listen, I'm all for it, but even under the sequester, they keep talking about 800,000 civilians are going to be laid off from the Pentagon. I don't believe it, because the Pentagon is increasing their budget as a result of this in terms of real dollars. Let me ask you this. I see 4 Senate stars. You're one of them. You, Marco, Ted Cruz, and Mike Lee seem to be the real strong conservative voices that I look to bring some sanity back to Washington. Are you all friends?
Yep. We have lunch together a couple times a week. We
Just
get
the 4 of
along.
you?
Well, no, I mean, with the whole group.
Oh, okay.
But we do eat together, and we get along. We work on different issues together. And I see a lot of the freshness being new members to the Senate. The system beats you down, and that's why I'm a big believer in term limits. We need more rollover, more turnover, because after you've been there a while, it's just hard to have the energy it takes to combat. Government is just this enormous behemoth. It's hard to combat that government.
A lot of speculation you might run for president. I know it's early, but it seems you are thinking about it.
I think the country is seeing, and the Republican Party in particular, that we're not doing very well in New England or on the West Coast. And I think we may need a different type of Republican, one with libertarian Republican leanings.
That's how you view yourself, as a libertarian Republican.
Libertarian Republican, constitutional conservative, a lot of different labels, but someone who can appeal to independents, who says, look, I believe in a strong national defense, but we don't have to be involved in every war around the world. I believe that government does have a prerogative to tell you, yes, it's not good for you to use drugs, but if you make a mistake, should you go to prison for 20 years? No, I think we have more lenient policy towards nonviolent crime. On immigration, I think we need to embrace immigrants. My family came as I'm the grandson or great-grandson of immigrants. We all came here. We need to embrace immigrants and say that they're an asset to our society.
Oh, I think the 4 of you really can have a big impact on the country. So it's going to be interesting to watch all this unfold. Good to see you in New York.
All right. Thanks for having me.
No more than 7 bullets, and you can't have it more than 16 ounces of Coke.
I don't know how I'm going to make it, Sean.
And you don't get salt if you go to a restaurant on your table unless you request it.
Do you know how many bullets that the police use on average to bring down one assailant?
Oh.
5 bullets. I mean,
What if there's 2
yeah, what
assailants?
if there are 3 assailants and you're not a policeman?
And by the way, if your hand's shaking because you're nervous, you're in real trouble.
And better not to reload when 3 people are breaking into your house.
Great point. All right, good to see you, Senator. Thank you.